Welcome to the Loving Support WIC Peer Counseling Training Program for WIC managers, coordinators, and supervisors. This training has been developed through a cooperative agreement between the USDA Food and Nutrition Service and Every Mother, Inc. It is designed to help state and local WIC agencies implement and sustain successful peer counseling programs that help participants in the special supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children receive the help they need to reach their breastfeeding goals. The training program for WIC Peer Counseling Program Managers, Coordinators, and Supervisors provides program guidance based on the FNS Loving Support Model, research on the evidence behind peer counseling, best practices adopted by state and local WIC agencies across the country, and solutions to address common challenges. State and local agency showcases are also included to highlight successful strategies. The curriculum is divided into 10 major sections. Each section is important for training new managers and for staff in existing programs to assure continued best practices in program management. Each section has an accompanying notebook and handouts. Feedback from participants during in-person training indicated the notebook was an extremely valuable resource. Both the notebook and handouts are accessible on the Maryland WIC SharePoint website. Please print each notebook section and the handouts prior to viewing the webinars so that you can follow along, take notes, and reference handouts as they are discussed. Welcome to Section 9, Mentoring and Supervising Peer Counselors. Peer counselors function best in an environment where they are mentored for a period after their initial training and supervised by caring staff who are sensitive to their needs while assuring that the goals of the program are being met. Mentoring and supervising can be the most rewarding and the most challenging job duty of the breastfeeding peer counselor coordinator. While this section does not provide detailed supervisory management training, it does provide options for mentoring peer counselors and key issues to consider when supervising peer counselors. You will want to have the following handouts available during this webinar: Staffing and Supervision 10 Peer Counselor Observation Tool, Staffing and Supervision 11 Questions for Mentors, and Staffing and Supervision 16 Peer Counselor Exit Survey. After viewing this webinar, WIC managers will be able to name 2 ways peer counselors can be supported in their job. The Loving Support Model states there must be adequate supervision and monitoring of peer counselors. After a peer counselor completes the Maryland WIC Loving Support Breastfeeding Peer Counselor 4-day training, her training will continue in the clinic with close supervision, monitoring, and regular periodic evaluations. A peer counselor's training continues throughout the first year with a final evaluation 1 year post-training. WIC agencies through the years have found that mentoring and ongoing supervision of peer counselors is integral to sustaining a successful peer counseling program. Supervision requires careful attention and guidance, continual availability to peer counselors, and ongoing support. The Loving Support Model states peer counseling programs must have designated breastfeeding peer counseling program managers and/or coordinators at the state and local level. Formative research for the National Breastfeeding Peer Counseling Program found that successful programs have designated coordinators and managers and supervisors with dedicated time to supervise peer counselors. Most programs are managed at the local level with statewide standards issued for supervising and monitoring the program. Supervisors tend to be local agency breastfeeding coordinators, regional or local peer counselor coordinators, WIC designated breastfeeding experts, DBEs, local agency nutritionists, staff, or contract lactation consultants. The time commitment involved in supervising the work of peer counselors can vary depending on the number of peer counselors hired, agency caseload, and geographic size of the agency. Webinar number 3, Program Logistics, and the job description for the local agency breastfeeding peer counselor coordinator detail the duties of the position. These duties include training, follow-up, mentoring, referrals, spot checks, and monitoring. Some of these duties will take more time depending on the level of experience of the agency's peer counselors. It is to be expected that supervisors will be required to spend more time mentoring and taking referrals from new peer counselors. The USDA breastfeeding policy dated 2016 states a 0.25 full-time equivalent is required for managing a local program of 3 to 5 peer counselors. Clinic staff who are hired into peer counselor supervisor positions sometimes feel uneasy if they lack experience. Very few people have inborn supervisory skills. They are usually learned. New supervisors should always receive supervisor training. An important training note: it is beyond the scope of this curriculum to provide supervisory skills training. There are many resources that local agencies can explore for general leadership and supervisory skills training. Once a new peer counselor is hired and is beginning her training, she should go through a process of shadowing and observing other peer counselors and lactation experts working with mothers and babies. This helps see the practical application of what is learned throughout the training. It also helps her build confidence by seeing positive practices modeled. Staffing in Supervision 8, Shadowing Breastfeeding Experts, Peer Counselor Log, can be used to document and track these shadowing opportunities. The first 6 months of her job are considered a period of mentoring as the peer counselor practices and grows her new skills. Evaluations by the peer counselor supervisor are part of this intense mentoring process in the first 6 months after peer counselor training is completed. These evaluations are conducted at 1, 3, and 6 months post-training. The state breastfeeding peer counselor coordinator sends the evaluation tool as well as reminders to local peer counselor coordinators at the times these evaluations are due. Mentoring can be provided by the supervisor, the WIC designated breastfeeding expert, clinic staff, and senior peer counselors who have attended senior peer counselor training. Each provides valuable perspectives in helping the peer counselor grow her confidence and ability to function effectively in her job. Senior breastfeeding peer counselor training covers some of this information as well as communication skills to help provide constructive feedback to new peer counselors. A mentor serves as a coach, providing guidance, resources, training, and support. A mentor makes allowances in the beginning as the peer counselor is learning the job. Peer counselors are WIC moms who may not have been employed before. Treating peer counselors with respect through mentoring guidance will help them gain confidence as they build skills. A good mentor will maintain frequent contact to give peer counselors many opportunities to debrief on their contacts with mothers and to address early challenges. Listen and ask questions to help the peer counselor explore feelings about the job. Encourage the peer counselor to problem solve by asking her to formulate good solutions to problems she is encountering. Challenge the peer counselor to try new things and use her skills in new ways. Provide information, guidance, and support. Mentors will guide the peer counselor in understanding her job, making initial contacts with mothers, and completing her required paperwork. Listen in on participant contacts and offer suggestions for handling situations that might arise. Remind the peer counselor about her scope of practice and correcting breastfeeding information that may not be evidence-based. Help the peer counselor navigate the clinic flow. Peer counselors are more likely to be motivated when they learn new skills and progress in the job. Mentor feedback will help assure them of that and show them how they can improve their skills to continue that growth. Supervisors or other mentors should sit in on a peer counselor's early contacts with WIC participants to praise them and offer initial feedback. Staffing in Supervision 10 Peer Counselor Observation Tool can be used as a guide for providing that feedback. A systematic approach can be used for this initial feedback, beginning with initial shadowing so the peer counselor can see how the job is done. Consider a two-person consultation in which the peer counselor observes the mentor talking with the mother. When she is comfortable, allow her to take the lead on a consult. This can be easier as an in-person visit rather than making a cold call by phone. In-person consultations enable the peer counselor to see the mother and benefit from body language clues and visual feedback. The mentor can then assist more easily if that becomes necessary. If doing a phone consult first, encourage the peer counselor to imagine that the mother is sitting in front of her. Smile and the mother will hear the positive approach in her tone of voice. Observe her performance and give her helpful feedback. Ask her what she thinks went well and what she wishes had gone better. Model affirmation skills by letting her know that most peer counselors feel a little nervous making their first contacts, and that practice will build confidence. Soon, she'll feel like a pro. Praise her progress. Show her what she is doing right. Let her know you think she will be a great peer counselor and that she will have the WIC team there to support her. The loving support model states peer counselors must have regular, systematic contact with the supervisor. Continue to observe the peer counselor during early contacts with mothers in the clinic to praise what she is doing well and to provide guidance. When a peer counselor demonstrates she can manage calls well, she can begin handling contacts on her own. Staffing in Supervision 11, Questions for Mentors, can be used for weekly meetings or phone calls. It gives ideas for discussion questions and areas to explore when mentoring the peer counselor. Explore her progress and any concerns she has. Help her troubleshoot any challenges of working the job into her personal life. Be patient and gentle when peer counselors do not perform as expected initially. New job skills take time to learn, and some take longer than others. Model effective counseling skills by using open-ended questions and affirmations in your conversations with her. Use the 1, 3, and 6-month evaluations as opportunities to provide objective, constructive feedback. Offer additional training and shadowing opportunities as needed. Goals are a roadmap to assure peer counselors they are headed in the right direction. Goals help peer counselors see when changes or improvements need to be made and feel pride when those goals are reached. Good supervisors communicate the expectations of the program clearly. They encourage peer counselors to take ownership by setting their own goals for personal and professional growth. Peer counselors need continuous feedback from the supervisor, especially in the early days. Being available as a resource as they encounter new situations they may be unsure about will help them grow as peer counselors. Evaluations can provide opportunities to offer feedback, revisit the peer counselor's goals, and assess strengths and areas for improvement. Peer counselors need praise for both the big accomplishments and small victories along the way. Celebrating successes will help peer counselors feel proud and motivated to continue growing. After 6 months, when the peer counselor has demonstrated that she is functioning well, the relationship can shift to more of a supervisory role. Discuss this changing relationship with her. Allow her to set new goals for where she would like to be and identify what support will help her get there. Let her know that she is responsible for doing paperwork properly, attending staff meetings without being reminded, and following appropriate procedures. Regular contacts remain important, particularly when peer counselors are working beyond the WIC clinic environment. Peer counselors will continue to grow when they are allowed to learn more and to stretch their potential with new challenges. For example, allow them to mentor new peer counselors, help with a training event, assist in a prenatal class, or research a breastfeeding challenge to present at a staff meeting. The loving support model states peer counselors must have opportunities for continuing education and to meet regularly with other peer counselors. Monthly staff meetings help peer counselors keep their skills sharp. These meetings are widely used by nearly all successful programs to touch base with peer counselors and discuss their work, to assure that accurate information is given, to provide opportunity to brainstorm creative solutions for dealing with challenges, to keep peer counselors engaged and interested in the program, to provide social interaction so peer counselors feel excited about the program. Consider ways to ease the financial burden to peer counselors, especially for those working outside the clinic setting. Consider holding meetings in areas that are close to public transportation or near the hospital where they conduct hospital visits. Select meeting times that do not conflict with picking up older children from school. Consider ways to make meetings meaningful and fun. Review procedures and policies and provide breastfeeding update information. Allow peer counselors to share their experiences and discuss strategies. Supervisors are responsible for monitoring the work of peer counselors. Weekly contacts help keep on top of day-to-day activities of peer counselors. All peer counselor contacts should be documented and reviewed by the supervisor. Run the Breastfeeding Contacts History Report in WOW to review breastfeeding peer counselor contacts. Contacts should be reviewed periodically by supervisors to assure that WIC participants are receiving timely contacts, follow-up, and appropriate referrals. Supervisors could also ask peer counselors to identify 3 or 4 mothers they had contact with in the past week that they would like to discuss, and examine those contacts to discuss her thoughts about how things went. Some supervisors review these forms during the monthly staff meetings to ask questions and provide immediate feedback. This review will alert supervisors if appropriate information is being shared with WIC moms and whether peer counselors need any additional training. Spot checks are an important part of the program monitoring to assure that participants are satisfied with the care they receive. This is important when monitoring peer counselors who work outside the WIC clinic setting. The spot check should never be framed with the mother as checking up on the peer counselor. It is important to preserve the relationship between the mother and her peer counselor. Instead, supervisors should use the spot check as a way to assure that the mother is doing well, has received the help she needs to resolve her concerns, and to identify further resources she might need. Remember that WIC mothers often do not recall their peer counselor phoning them or do not understand the term peer counselor. If spot checks reveal concerns that client contacts are not being made as reported, conduct additional checks and follow up with the peer counselor as needed. Although it is not common, supervisors occasionally must release a peer counselor from her duties. Some reasons might be fraudulently reporting activity that never occurred for payment, failing to perform job duties. Always explore the reasons to determine if the peer counselor needs a temporary leave until her personal life becomes more manageable. Conflicts between peer counselors or conflicts between a peer counselor and WIC clinic staff that cannot be resolved. Breaking confidentiality as determined by state policy. Supporting peer counselors should be an integral part of the program. Peer counselors are often in difficult life circumstances themselves. Providing support for WIC clients can be emotionally draining. Peer counselors who work outside the WIC clinic setting may experience isolation. Be sensitive to transportation challenges and financial issues and explore ways to reduce the financial burden. As a current or former WIC participant, peer counselors often share similar financial concerns to the mothers they are counseling. Transportation to the clinic might be a challenge. Personal phones might be disconnected. Childcare can be costly. Respect family needs. Keep peer counselors connected to one another and to the supervisor. This helps them remain motivated and feeling good about their role. Thank them for making referrals and show them how their quick follow-up results in positive outcomes for mothers. Assure that they have ongoing access to the WIC designated breastfeeding expert for situations beyond their scope of practice. Maintain ongoing communication. Affirm peer counselors continually as important members of the WIC team. Peer counselors thrive on praise, which shows them they are valuable contributors to the important work of WIC. When a peer counselor leaves her position, always conduct an exit interview. Learn the factors involved in her decision. Identify recommendations that can improve the program. Ask what could have been done to better support her. Encourage constructive criticism to improve supervision for future peer counselors. We need to be open to feedback on our supervisory skills, clinic environment, and general support of our peer counselors and peer counseling program. The handout, Staffing and Supervision 16, Peer Counselor Exit Survey for Peer Counselor Supervisor, provides sample questions that can be asked in an exit interview. In addition to the exit interview, require that peer counselors return all WIC items used in the course of their job. This includes documentation forms and records, and any equipment or supplies issued to her. This concludes Section 9, Mentoring and Supervising Peer Counselors. Please continue with our final webinar, Section 10, Retaining Peer Counselors.